the camera up, get the self-awareness going. It's only 20 past 11 at night, and I want to show you what I've just been doing. Final warning, the PDF version has expired. I don't want that. Right, 20 minutes is going, 22 seconds has gone by. I want the floating ball up. Well, where's that to? Here. Microphone not available. Something else is using it. What on earth? I bloody better hope not. Right. Old man Masters has been taking himself far too seriously, but you do have to have a quick look at this. Yeah, we know you're deep seek. Einstein and Bohr, rivals and comrades. The modern twist and so on. What was my... You struck at a profound truth about quantum discovery. We did find the largest quanta first, not because they're fundamental, but because they're accessible to the human scale experiments. Bohr and Einstein's quantum battles were fought on the atomic battlefield precisely because that's where quantum effects first cracked the visible world. But my point, Mr. Masters, in terms of seeking to, in this conversation, assert primacy, I believe it's called, assert primacy to the idea that I nudged the AI to say, well, what about X-ray crystallography? That was 1912, because we were discussing a meeting between Bohr and Einstein in 1916, right in the middle of the First World War. And Bohr's trying to convince Einstein to accept quanta. And I said, well, what experiments did they have? Because you can't say you should believe in quanta because of Heisenberg's uncertainty or Heisenberg's principles, because they don't come for 10 years. Now, this may be a farmer's way of looking at things, but the thing is, what evidence was there for quanta in 1916? And if once you get past that, which for me is an acceptance that quantization occurs at multiple scales, right? And these guys were talking about whole atoms, and indeed in my case I drew attention to the fact it was a crystal lattice. You know, it's actually multiple layers of atoms that exercise quantized emission. What else do we know? That it's related to the elements and the size of, therefore, the center of Bohr's atom. But we don't have existence yet proven for any of the particles that consist or can be regarded as particles for the nucleus of an atom. So what my AI does is take my mind back in history as a historian of science and say, what was the conversation like? And how on earth did it go? And then you see a photograph of the pair of them together, and in a moment I'm going to have a look for some photographs of them in 1925 when the war had finished and they were still talking to each other on a regular annual basis, along with every other nuclear scientist and quantum scientist in Europe. And the Americans were listening from the other side of the ocean. I think that's a bit of a sort of summary of what the field of study's been doing tonight. But I'm glad. It says I struck on a profound truth, and And what it doesn't know is that this here, where it says I've struck on a profound truth, no, the text I fed in right at the top was its own words, which I thought were beautiful, quite honestly, in terms of, uh, here we go, starts right up here. See how quick you can feed it back to itself. You've grasped the human texture of their rivalry. Let's freeze frame them in 1916. Then it says, you know, how they would have talked to each other. Einstein at this stage is a genius, and Bohr is a superstar. Einstein has public interest behind him, more so than Bohr. Yeah, this is how it goes. So I'm trying to get to the idea of a bot that says, if you put these two people in the same room, would they agree with each other? Or how would they respond to the modern world? That sort of thing. It's a kind of thought experiment that you could conjure up. Given that the world is moving in a direction of sort of pure fantasy, how can we keep a tiller on the authenticity of such thought experiments? I mean, there are some sort of quite crazy ones that you could do. You could say, you know, Mickey Mouse meets Donald Duck. Netanyahu meets the International Court of Human Justice. I think It from Bit is interesting because I think there's a book in it, or better still, a play, or a screenplay. Shall we see? I don't know very much about Wheeler. He's the actual. I know his words more than I know his character. If, of course, you take away from his paper the subject matter about which he's talking, and look more at the structure of his argument and the way he uses language, it's possible to say you get an insight on the character of the man. And I'm deliberately using language there that is not meant to exclude women from playing a role on the stage, but I happen to know that he is a man, and like all men, but particularly men of his age, being a man would incline him to a particular mindset, I think. But anyway, this is just getting into the noise. The fact is that the AI can imagine conversations between giants, intellectual giants. And if you're interested in conversations between intellectual giants, well, it's one of the things that I'm studying in the field of study. All right, let's leave it at that.